This is episode 250 of the Rio Grande Foundation's Tipping Point, New Mexico. I'm Paul Gessing, president of the Rio Grande Foundation, New Mexico's free market think tank. You can find out more about the foundation at riograndefoundation.org. I am very pleased to be joined by Grover Norquist. He is the founder and president of Americans for Tax Reform, also known as ATR. And welcome to Tipping Point, New Mexico, Grover.
Good to be with you.
Yeah, so you work in Washington, D.C. Your efforts involve working to reform and cut taxes, also economic regulations, et cetera, et cetera. Talk a little bit about your involvement in, what, for lack of a better word, is the anti-tax movement, but I know it's a little more nuanced than that. But talk about how you got involved and your general philosophy on things.
Sure, absolutely. I got involved a long time ago. Citizens for Limited Taxation, the Massachusetts group that passed a successful initiative like Prop 13 in California that put real limits on property taxes. It made it difficult for the government to raise the income tax. There's a flat rate income tax in Massachusetts by constitution. 5 times we've defended efforts to move to a progressive income tax, just as Illinois this year voted down creating a progressive graduated income tax. Massachusetts has done that 5 times. So I just realized that the key issue is the government going to get more money. And if we can stop that, then we can also begin the conversation about limiting spending. So the idea of the Taxpayer Protection Pledge, which was created in 1986 during the fight for tax reform, we ask all candidates, state legislators, governors, presidents, congressmen, senators, to sign a pledge to the American people and to the people of their state that they will oppose and vote against any and all tax increases. And after Bush raised taxes in 1990 and then lost the presidency in 92 because he raised taxes. Otherwise, he is a fairly successful president. In 94, we got 99% of all the Republicans running for office to sign the pledge. We're up above 90% are taking the pledge now at the national level. And we haven't had a tax increase as long as the Republicans had the House or the Senate or the presidency since 90. And so it really has made the Republican Party at the national level the party that will not raise your taxes. We may invade small countries we can't pronounce, but we will not raise your taxes. And as a result, whereas the Republicans had the House and the Senate for 4 years of 62 years between 1932 and 1994, about 2/3 of the time now, the Republicans have had the House and the Senate. So it really changed the nature of the modern Republican Party. There are Democrats who take the pledge, just not many, so we're nonpartisan. Our job is to say no tax increases, reduce taxes as much as we can, and then fight for spending restraint.
All right, thanks for that description. It's very thorough. And I've heard you describe your broad movement as the Leave Us Alone Coalition. Briefly describe that and talk about this election kind of in general terms, some pluses, some minuses across the board, but will government be leaving us a little bit more alone, or are they going to be more in our business than ever before after Election Day?
Yeah, the modern center-right, the conservative movement, Reagan Republicans, is a movement of people for whom on their vote-moving issue, what they want from the government is simply to be left alone. Taxpayers, don't raise my taxes. You don't have taxpayers saying, raise Fred's taxes. They just say, don't raise taxes. Small businessmen and women who don't want to be regulated or taxed out of existence. Homeschoolers. We'll see how long this lasts, but we went from 5% of kids being homeschooled to 10% this last semester. Homeschoolers simply want to be left alone to homeschool. They don't knock on your door and tell you to homeschool. They wish to be left alone. The 10% of people who go to send their kids to private schools and make that sacrifice. They wish to be left alone and not have their education for their children dictated by the state or the federal government. All the various communities of faith. They want religious liberty for themselves, in which case they realize everybody has to have it. And otherwise, they don't ask for Baptist stamps or tell everybody they have to be an Episcopalian. They want to be left alone to practice their own faith and transmit it to their kids. The Second Amendment community, 20 million Americans with a concealed weapon permit, 14, 15 million hunters. Leave my Second Amendment rights alone. So as you go around the table in a broad center-right, conservative, Reagan Republican movement, you see that people are there because not on all issues, they're not all libertarians, but on the issue that moves their vote, leave me alone. They're not asking for anything from the government. And of course, the alternative political movement is about a takings coalition who view the proper role of government as stealing stuff from other people and giving it to them. And so there's a reason why the two parties don't have a lot of overlap anymore, because the two tendencies are very much in conflict. Either the government's going to get bigger and tell you run more of your life, or get smaller and give you more liberty. And we had some real wins for liberty in this last election. Colorado, the the liberal groups were all going to put on the ballot a measure to get rid of their constitutionally mandated flat tax. 9 states have a requirement for a single rate flat tax. Colorado is one of them. Illinois is one. The Colorado liberals couldn't even get the signatures to put a graduated progressive income tax on the ballot. John Caldera of the Independence Institute, similar to your institute here in New Mexico, they got together and put on the ballot a tax reduction for everybody in the state, just 200 million, but moved it from 4.5 down just a bit. But it passed because when you cut a flat tax or a single rate tax, everybody benefits, not just some, and everybody knows exactly how much they benefit. They could do the math. So that was a huge win. Illinois voted down by 10 points, 55-45, no to a graduated income tax. Their left-wing governor put $50 million of his own money into the effort to get a graduated or progressive income tax. It was voted down by the people. It was put on the ballot by state legislators who now have to look out and realize that 55% of the people in the room when they talk were not for what they put on the ballot and tried to stick people with. California had a measure to damage Proposition 13 to make it possible to, or mandatory to raise the business taxes on property taxes. It would have been $12 billion a year sucked out of the economy. That was voted down. And so, I mean, these have been very, very helpful. Michigan was asked, should you need a warrant to go into people's computers? Just, you know, they need a warrant to come in and get your papers. What about my computer? It's not on paper, it's on my computer. That got 89% of the vote, 89% of the vote for privacy and leaving people alone. Colorado also voted to say they had a ban, they had a constitutional amendment called Tabor, Taxpayer Bill of Rights from 20 years ago, which said, you know what? If you want to raise taxes, state or local, you need to vote of the people. Well, some clever and aggressive politicians said, well, what about fees? And the very left-wing Supreme Court in Colorado said, fees are not taxes. So everything became a fee. And so Tabor was being undermined. This constitutional amendment goes, listen carefully, taxes is fees, fees is taxes. And so that hole was plugged that the politicians were getting around. California, back in, I believe, 1996, had a proposition, and that said no racial preferences, no racial discrimination in education or hiring by the government. That passed overwhelmingly back in the 90s, and the liberal legislature put on the ballot, let's get rid of that and allow discrimination in education and employment, state employment. That was defeated almost 60-40. So the whole identity politics effort and telling people, you know, you have to pick staff or people going to college based on race, ethnicity, crushed. So I think that's interesting because California is a very diverse state, very liberal state. overwhelming opposition to the idea of racial identity politics in that form. And when the Supreme Court next takes that issue up, I know they're not supposed to respond to the politics of it, but to be reminded that California said loudly no to racial quotas and preferences, we might get the court to point out, and it's also unconstitutional, which it has always been. The point of the 14th Amendment was to say no to this sort of behavior. So that was a big one. And Alaska was asked to vote on a tax increase on oil production. And they voted that down because they realized that was a job killer in Alaska. So that, I think, was a very healthy sign. And from sort of a small L libertarian sense, that, let's see, South Dakota, Montana, Arizona, and New Jersey all legalized marijuana, and Mississippi approved medical marijuana, and Oregon decriminalized all drugs, period, everything. So there really is a backing away from the government telling people what to do when the measure's on the ballot. Now, Illinois voted for Biden, but Illinois also said no graduated income tax. Biden says he wants to have a very progressive tax increase. So there's, but if Biden looks at the state he carried, that state did not want, they were as opposed to a graduated income tax as they were in favor of Biden. So it's a little bit of a mixed message. And at his peril, he goes out and champions the left-wing things that are so popular in his caucus, but not in Illinois.
Yeah, thanks, Grover, for that overview of some of the important ballot initiatives. And, ballot initiatives have their pluses and minuses. New Mexico is not a state that has many of those. And often taxes, for example, or various freedoms that you might have seem to perform really well in the ballot. And then you get a high tax candidate like Joe Biden, who's pledged to raise taxes, and a guy who not only hasn't raised taxes, but has pledged to lower them and will likely lower them again if he somehow gets back in there, President Trump. Now, people don't always vote on the issues, but talk about both the presidential election and the Senate and Congress races. And it was a lot more close than the media and the pundits had expected, although it does appear at this point that President Trump is not going to have enough votes to win re-election. But share your thoughts on this election.
Sure. A couple of big takeaways. One, the press did such a hatchet job on Trump that I certainly believed that they were going to get him by 7 points, 8 points, 10 points. And that didn't happen. Then you go to the Senate, where there was every reason to think that with this blue wave, because everybody wanted all this liberal stuff, we were told, that it looks as though we'll hold the Senate. The Georgia fight's coming up, but the polling's good and should be, with lots of work and probably $1 billion spent, we should hold those 2 Senate seats and have 52 Republicans in the Senate. And by that means that Biden's effort to repeal the entire Trump tax cut will be blocked. What does that mean? For a family of 4, a median income family of 4, it's a $2,000 tax increase to get rid of Biden's tax cut, because that's the size that the median income family of 4 got, $2,000 tax increase every year into the future. When Biden says out of one side of his mouth, I'm going to get on the day one, I'm going to get rid of all the Trump tax cuts. And then he says, but I'm never going to tax anyone who earns less than $400,000 a year. Well, you can't do both of those. The Trump tax cut was a significant tax cut for all income groups in the United States. And Biden is either going to have not repeal all of it. Well, first of all, Republican Senate stops him from repealing any of it. But he was planning on repealing all of it, which was a tax increase on middle income people. He was going to bring back the AMT, the alternative minimum tax, which millions of Americans were hit with and 30 million were threatened with until the Republicans pulled it back. The AMT was passed in 1969 to hit 155 people, 155 rich people who put all their money in municipal bonds, and that wasn't taxed. So they had $1 million, but they didn't pay any taxes. And 155 people did this, and that irritated everybody else. Obviously, they got a lower rate of return on their investment in New York City's bonds, but they didn't pay taxes. So to fix 155 people, they put an entire structure up only for the rich, except, you know what, with inflation, pretty soon, tens of millions of people were going to be rich. And we've called that back. We got rid of almost all of it with the Trump effort. Biden says he'll bring that back and hit tens of millions of middle-class people with that tax. There's also the Obamacare penalty tax. That is the $700 to $2,000, depending on your income, to punish you because you didn't buy Obamacare. You didn't buy, so you don't get Obamacare for $700, $2,000. You get hit on the side of the head and they take your money. 5 million Americans were hit by that tax. 3/4 of those people, and Biden wants to bring this tax back, 3/4 of them earned less than $50,000 a year. So Biden has publicly said, I'm not going to tax anyone who makes less than $400,000, and I'm going to get 5 million of you who got beat up until Trump and the Republicans came in and they took that tax to zero. He's going to bring it back for 5 million people, all middle income, lower middle income Americans. So when you ask how much damage would Biden be to middle and lower income people, depends on what day he's talking. But now that he's elected, I think anyone, if Biden was able to move something through, middle income people would be in big trouble. The Republicans should be able to stop that in the Senate, or will stop it as long as they have the Senate majority. He also talked about wanting to tax energy. There's the dog that didn't bark story. And what the dog that didn't bark in this election was, this was the first time in several years where we haven't had a tax on energy, a carbon tax on the ballot. It was twice in Washington State. It was in several states. It's lost every time. This time they didn't want it on the ballot because they didn't want it interfering with Biden getting elected, talking about other things, but they hoped that Biden would put in a massive tax on energy, on gasoline, on home heating oil. And so that's a very interesting one. They've learned, as Hillary Clinton's campaign manager did on taxes, when asked why they weren't talking about a energy tax, a carbon tax, he said, we've looked at the polls, it all sucks. So that at the top ranks of Hillary world, they knew the thing they intended to impose on everyone was death politically, which is why she didn't talk about it, but would have done it if she'd had a House and Senate willing to go along with her.
Well, let's talk about energy a little bit. Of course, played a big role in the presidential election, the last debate. Trump seemed to really do a good job of kind of putting Joe Biden in a corner on his pledges. Although not fully fleshed out, he seemed to be on both sides of the fracking ban issue. But as you know, New Mexico is one of the nation's top energy states. Unfortunately, we're also a blue state that elects a lot of people, including but not limited to Biden, who don't care for the energy industry. With a Republican Congress, Biden's got a limited set of options, but we've all seen how executive orders from Obama can impact things, Trump, and then now it's back to Biden. So what's your take kind of more administratively there in Washington, D.C.? Where do you see things heading with energy issues?
The fracking miracle explosion took place on private land and state land, because if Obama could get it, he got the total oil and natural gas dropped by about 10% production on federal land. So where Biden's boss, Obama, could get at it, he damaged it. Didn't stop it, but damaged it. But where he couldn't is where the United States had tremendous growth in fracking and oil and natural gas production, and became, as President Trump likes to say, energy dominant, which is true, and made Russia irrelevant as a world player because its power largely flowed from the amount of energy it had. Saudi Arabia's behaved reasonably, the countries that used to be able to throw their weight around because prices of oil, because shortages. I mean, Venezuela went bankrupt and it's all falling apart. but we didn't notice it. We took Iran off the grid and we didn't notice it. So in the United States, the fracking thing has made the United States economically and militarily much more powerful than some of our enemies. And it's a key part of the strong America, which is why it's so sad that Biden doesn't get that. But I think that he will try through regulations to slow things down. Probably, certainly permitting on federal land will be held up. He'll put out bans on offshore oil drilling, things like that. And all things that can be undone. I mean, the good news about a Biden presidency is there isn't anything he'll get done that we can't turn around and undo with a different president. And looking at the whole election, the Republicans, the Democrats, I was just prior to talking to you, I was on the phone with one of the leading Republican conservatives in Texas. The left spent $60 million to flip the House of Representatives in Texas so they could do redistricting. $60 million. I'd been told that the Democrats spent $88 million in all the states. So that must be one group put the $88 million in, because others, Democrats spent $60 million to take, they didn't get additional state legislators. They didn't get the House. They didn't get the Senate. They tried in Arizona for the Senate. They tried in Missouri. They tried in Florida. They tried in North Carolina, both houses. They tried and failed in Ohio. They tried and failed in Michigan, the House, in Wisconsin, House and Senate. They picked up no state legislative bodies. Of 99 state legislative bodies, they didn't flip one. And the Republicans picked up the House and the Senate in the great state of New Hampshire. And since they have 400 members of the House, we picked up a lot of legislators. And in Montana, we got a governor. Republicans got a governor there. And in Alaska, where there was a coalition government with liberal Democrats and moderate Republicans, there's now a fully conservative Republican Senate caucus there. Pretty sure it's the Senate, maybe the House. Looks a lot alike in the snow. But so Alaska, Republican, conservative, House, Senate, governor. Montana, House, Senate, governor, conservative, Republican. And in New Hampshire, House, Senate, governor. The Democrats picked up no bodies, no state legislative bodies, no governors. And the Republicans picked up 190 or so state legislators around the country. There are, of the 50 states, some say 57, but we'll go for traditional 50 states. There are 25 states where the Republicans have both houses of the legislature and the governor, including Nebraska, which is unicameral and technically not partisan, but Republican majority. So 25 states, if the Republicans get together, they can pass anything they want. There are 15 states where the Democrats have the House, Senate, and the governorship, like New Mexico, California, New York, Hawaii, 15 states. So the Republican control at the state and local level for redistricting, the Republicans will be able to redistrict somewhere between 4 and 5 times as many congressional districts as the Democrats do. So if you're looking over the next 10 years, the Daily Cause, KOS, is a left-wing newsletter website, very grown up, very serious. Read them. They're intelligent liberals. And they just screamed that they've lost the House of Representatives for a decade because the Republicans picked up, I don't know, maybe 10 seats so far. They're still counting them, but it looks like the Republicans will have 210, 212, maybe even 214 out of 218 majority this year. And then moving forward, because so many seats are moving from blue states to red states because the population relative to everybody else is falling in New York and Connecticut and New Jersey and other states, and growing in red states like Texas, Florida, Tennessee, North Carolina. Just that movement alone will pick up 6 or more seats for the Republicans. When you do redistrict, in addition, you're looking at even more growth, and because there'll be some backlash to Biden's left-wing ideas. And even if he can't do them, he's going to talk about them. He's going to scare people. And there will be some regulations, as you were saying, on fracking and against the energy industry. When people see the teeth there will be a slap back. And I think the Republicans will take the House and hold the Senate in 22. And then that puts you up to control it for the rest of the decade. in terms of fixing things, we really need to get a different president after Trump after Biden probably. Again, I think Trump has a point. I think we should count every legal ballot, but it still looks as though you can't find the signatures because they've thrown them out. So you can't check the signatures. And in the Pennsylvania court said you don't have to have signatures on your ballots. They've thrown them out in Georgia, so you can't go back and check them. You can count all the ballots, but you don't know whose they were. And in Pennsylvania, they actually said we're not checking signatures anymore, or postmarks. So it didn't even have to come from the post office. You could print it up at home, in theory. So there's some real challenges there. Hopefully we'll get that straightened out for elections to come so we can have secure and trustworthy elections. But if we have Biden for 4 years, I don't expect, given his age, he runs again, but it's going to be his record that people will be voting on. And I don't think he's going to be able to do the damage he wants. We'll see what he can do by executive order, but he's not cleverer than Obama. And Obama did some damage, but we lived with it.
Yeah, exactly. And, I'm going to talk to you in a minute about 2024, which we'll see. I'd be interested in your thoughts on who might run on the Republican side. But before we get to that, at the state legislative levels, there's a lot that can happen at the state level. And, of course, we wish we had a more favorable legislature here in the land of enchantment. But Montana, I know, has been a state that's been on the radar for right to work. And right to work isn't quite the bellwether issue because the Supreme Court ruled in the Janus case that government employees can't be coerced to join a union, but it's still something you can show yourself to be and line yourself up against the other guys. And New Hampshire and Montana both seems like they're going to be able to move in that direction. Boy, it's hard to beat a state like New Hampshire with no income or sales tax, but do you see any big changes coming either from those states or any other states that are doing some innovative things across the country these days?
Oh, sure. I think Montana, they haven't had a Republican governor in Montana like 20 years. So they've got a lot of catching up to do. You've seen Texas is going to vote in just a month or two to ban any government-funded lobbyist from lobbying. So towns, cities, counties cannot hire professional lobbyists to go lobby for the state to raise taxes and give it to them, or associations funded with taxpayer dollars cannot do that. It did not pass last time. It will pass in January, February of this year. That is something I think that a lot of red states will quickly mimic their success. You saw the Goldwater Institute enact legislation protecting Airbnb, and so that cities couldn't harass people who want to rent their homes for a weekend. And that legislation has moved across the country. They also put in legislation to protect Uber drivers from being stopped and harassed by local government, the way that the Democrats did in Austin, Texas. They banned Uber or put in so many regulations that Uber left. Okay, said we can't live with that. And then the state of Texas passed a law that says, shut up, Austin. No city regulates Uber, Lyft. We do. And by the way, we're not. So you can't do that. On the list of good news, I left out one, and that is on initiatives. Our friends in California, the state legislature, passed a measure AB 5, Assembly Bill 5, which made Uber and Lyft illegal because you can't be an independent contractor. You have to be everybody has to have a boss, and therefore everybody has to be unionized, and therefore everybody, or can be unionized, and everybody has to be paid hourly. Well, that's not the way Uber and Lyft work, right? You choose when to work and how much to work. And if you put somebody on an hourly basis, they're not, it doesn't work. So they die. And that was going to happen in California, and the people of California voted overwhelmingly to save Uber and Lyft and punch the legislature in the nose for getting in the way of independent contractor law. So watch for other states to also protect. There's a great bill that passed in Iowa that's also being done in others, and that preempts local governments from doing anything that interferes with the state's revenue flow. So they can't ban plastic bags because the state gets sales money from people who buy plastic bags. The city can't. And the state could do something stupid, but it's harder to convince a state to do something stupid than a particular town or city or county. And you can't regulate things in a way that disadvantages economic activity in Iowa by local government. So preemption bills that stop banning pet stores, which they wanted to do in Colorado and other places. So that kind of preemption law, I think you'll see a lot more success at. More and more states are getting rid of the prevailing wage laws. Most recently, West Virginia, heavily unionized state, got rid of the mini Davis-Bacon, the law that says when we build a road with state money, you have to pay union wages, which is and live by union work rules, which makes building roads more expensive than in those states which say, we'll go with the lowest bid from somebody who knows how to build roads, but we're not going to tell them how much to pay people and what kind of make work rules to have. So there are a lot of very good ideas bouncing around the various states. And I think it's the advantage that free market people have, Republicans have, is that our ideas succeed. And so if you pass it in one state, everybody can look at it. Texas has no income tax, personal income tax. That's pretty cool. Other people can see that it certainly works in terms of growth. Florida has no personal income tax, and that's working for them as well. So other states can go, I want to do that. North Carolina is doing something that I recommend all states think about, and that is they're phasing out their income tax. They say, when revenue hits this point, the income tax is going to drop this percentage. When it reaches this point. So when more revenue comes in because the economy is growing, that money is shared. Some the state gets, but the rest goes permanently to taxpayers in lower tax rates on their income. And you do that for 10, 15 years without any massive tax cut. You just let taxes go down as revenue comes up, and you have no income tax. That's Tennessee. Tennessee finally became a no income tax state this year. They used to have income taxes on interest income, but not on wages. Now all income is tax-free. And sadly, New Hampshire is not a fully income tax-free state because they do tax dividends and shares and things like that. They don't tax you on the work you do and get a paycheck, but they do tax you on your savings. The next job is to phase that out in New Hampshire so it becomes clearly a no income tax state and accurately a no income tax state.
Well, I wish we were doing even some of those things here in New Mexico, but alas, we're stuck under blue state rule. But before we leave some of these exciting policy initiatives in the federal scene, any ideas from the Republican side, especially who's going to be throwing their hat in the ring in 2024? Do you think Trump will run again? Any politicians out there already having those meetings, covertly talking to folks about running for president in the near future?
My guess is that Trump doesn't run again because over the next couple of years, there will be a recognition of how much good he did. And I think he can stand in front of any audience and talk about the success of the tax cuts, of deregulation, of avoiding stupid wars, of reestablishing the rule of law in America by having judges that have read the Constitution, take it seriously, and don't, as Ginsburg, Ginsburg has this famous decision in one case where she said, the law should say this. And she ruled that the law now says this, and she's making it up. Now, Congress then turned around and passed her idea, which I think was a bad one, but Congress can pass stupid laws. The Supreme Court is not allowed to pass stupid laws. They're supposed to look at the Constitution, or is this the law? Is this acceptable in the Constitution? Yes, no. And she was one of those people, unfortunately, who thought that if she had an interesting idea, she should stick it in the Constitution. We only have 3 of those of the 9 people on the Supreme Court who think that they get to rewrite the Constitution every time they sit down to do their job wearing robes. So Trump's accomplishments, I think, will shine, and much of the success, we're not going to have a recession because we elected Biden, because Biden can't raise taxes and he can't bankrupt us with more spending. And he's going to take a while to try and undo some of the good deregulation that Trump did, but that takes time, as we learned when Trump was doing the deregulating. Watch Mike Pence, vice president, former 2 times governor of Indiana, great Republican conservative congressman. Certainly the lady governor from South Carolina has been talking about running, and Kristi Noem, also woman governor of South Dakota, who's governed quite well. Any number of the senators might look to run. Senators tend to look in the mirror and see presidential person there. There you have Ted Cruz, who ran before, of Texas, Marco Rubio, who also ran before, of Florida.
Ted,
and watch governors, watch Republican governors, maybe Ducey of Arizona.
how about Ted Cruz? I don't think you mentioned him.
Oh, I thought I mentioned Cruz. Cruz was a senator, ran a senator now, and was a senator when he ran in 2016. He certainly could. I mean, at some point you decide, like Ted Kennedy did, I'm going to be a great Senate leader, and then you focus on that. But until then, you just look and say, I'd be a great president, and Cruz would be a fine president. And having run once, I mean, Richard Nixon and other people ran several times before. Reagan ran more than once before he finally won in 80. He ran in 68 briefly, and then he ran in 76. It's a big job, and heck, Trump started to run once or twice before when he really did. So there is an advantage to having run and failed. I mean, our friend Biden flopped twice. I don't know how much you learned from a belly flop is that big, but I guess you do learn, don't do this, don't do that. I have a list of things you don't want to do if you're running for office. So yeah, I think the governor of Texas, Abbott, might run. Oh, I'm sorry. The governor of Florida and the senator, Rick Scott from Florida, are both looking at running for president. So we could have 3 Floridians running, with Marco Rubio, the governor, and Rick Scott, the other senator. I think there are a lot of really qualified candidates, a lot of governors who we may not have heard from yet. But it takes 1 or 2 good ideas at a gubernatorial level, some, how we handle getting the vaccine out to people for COVID. I mean, we're in for some good times. I mean, we've now got a vaccine that's more than 90% effective. I mean, 40% is pretty good. You're just trying to stop people from infecting each other. They've got millions of capsules or doses. And although the idiot government started with a conversation now, how will we distribute this? And we'll get army trucks and CVS, Target, Walmart. There are government, you don't need the government to come up with how to distribute medicine, for crying out loud. And they go, oh yeah, we could do that too. So this can get out, and Oregon passed a law to legalize dentists to give you the vaccines. I think that's a great idea. I think dentists everywhere should be able to do the vaccines. I think nurses should be able to give you the vaccine. You don't need to be a doctor to give somebody a vaccine. And I've gotten my, not COVID, but flu shots from the local CVS. This should move very quickly. A lot because what Trump did was so speed up, Operation Warp Speed, so speed up the testing and production of this, that once they knew they had a product, which by the way was like 4 months ago, Pfizer knew they had something that was really good, but they have to go through all this testing. I don't know why you wanted 4 months of it, but that's fast for government work. And then they also started producing it months ago. That's how come we have like 100 million of them now.
Now, thanks for your time today, Grover. We have one last question, and That is, normally libertarians and limited government folks are pretty happy when government doesn't do a whole heck of a lot, but there have been isolated cases during the last 4 years, most notably on criminal justice reform, where libertarians, Republicans and Democrats in Washington got together and came up with pretty good bipartisan solutions about some things. Obviously, on the flip side, there's pretty strong agreement in yet another big round of so-called stimulus, bailout, whatever money. That's not something we're super excited about, but if these lockdowns continue, it's kind of a necessity, it seems like. Anyway, do you see anything good happening on a bipartisan basis, or maybe something that's not so good happening in that space?
There is a very good piece of legislation that expands dramatically the reach of how people can get 401ks and IRAs. And Neil, who's the lead Democrat on Ways and Means, is the co-sponsor of it with a Republican. Expanding IRAs and 401ks to make it easier for people to save does have bipartisan support. Now, Biden's people were talking about shutting down IRAs and 401ks. So I don't know about that. There is bipartisan support for expanding the whole access to charter schools. But Biden's people want no federal funds to burn. So there's some bipartisan support. We will see whether Biden is the nonpartisan, bipartisan guy that the left, that he's been trying to portray, or whether he's owned lock, stock, and barrel. Watch to see if Biden tries to kill the student scholarship bill that the Republicans passed. Obama killed, the Republicans put it back in, and it's thriving with thousands of kids getting scholarships to go to private schools in DC. And does Biden try and kill that? That's an interesting test of where his head is at. Is he owned by the hard left? Or on an issue like that has overwhelming support, particularly in the African-American community in DC, does he side with the students or the teachers' unions? Obama didn't think twice. Teachers' union, not students. Biden, we don't know that about Biden now. I hope we find that that's not the way he would operate. And there's also bipartisan legislation that Gore wanted to pass, said he wanted to pass, and as did Bush in 2001, and that is to allow all policemen to have a concealed carry permit that's good in the whole country. So they don't need to go out and get another one. If you're a policeman, you've done all that training, you can carry concealed on your own. That used to have bipartisan support. My guess is Bloomberg would threaten people who did that. So there's some opportunities, but if the hard left insists, maybe they don't let it happen. And the appropriators, you just always have to keep your eyes on them, even the Republicans, people who think their job is to spend other people's money. We need discipline there, and that is why your work and think tank are so helpful in educating people about, the government doesn't have to do everything. Things work fine when the government's not got their fingers in every pie.
All righty. Well, thank you for your time, Grover Norquist. You can find out more about his organization, Americans for Tax Reform, at atr.org.
Thank you, Paul.
Take care. All right. Thanks for listening to this week's show. Make sure to get the latest edition of Tipping Point New Mexico by subscribing on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, and Spotify. You can post or comment on this and other episodes on Facebook and Twitter, and tell Google Home to play Tipping Point New Mexico. Thanks to Path 3 Marketing for producing this show.